The air in the Dingle cottage was thick, not just with the unspoken fear of police intervention, but with the cloying scent of April's tearful confession. Marlon, pale and shaking, had just made the gravest threat of his life. He was calling the police. He clutched the receiver, his thumb hovering over the dial pad, the potential sound of the siren representing the return of their safety. But before the connection could be made, a sound, infinitely more chilling than any police alarm, echoed from the doorway, a polite, measured knock. The door swung inward, slow and deliberate, framing Celia Daniels, the embodiment of calculated malice. Her presence was immediate, suffocating. Jay Griffiths, in her role, ensured that Celia's Emmerdale debut would leave an indelible, terrifying mark. She did not stride in, she drifted, a poisonous mist settling over the family. Her smile, thin and sharp, did not reach her eyes, which were cold, assessing, and utterly devoid of pity. Rona, fueled by the immediate, visceral need to protect her child, was the first to move. She had heard enough of the horror, the forced drug runs, the grooming of Dylan and April to break through her habitual fear. "Get out of my house," Rona snapped, her voice cracking with fury and desperation. This was the primal scream of a mother confronting a predator, a sound that usually sends villains retreating. But Celia Daniels was no common villain. She approached Rona with the chilling precision of a striking snake. "Such noise," Celia purred, her voice a low, serpentine whisper that seemed to absorb the light in the room. Before Rona could recoil, Celia's hand shot out, grabbing her by the face. It was not a hold of anger, but one of cold, crushing superiority. Rona struggled, the skin tearing slightly under Celia's sharp nails until she started to bleed. The visual shock paralyzed Marlon and April. April, still reeling from the weight of her shared secrets, let out a small, broken gasp. Celia leaned in close to Rona, her breath cold. "I advise silence," she murmured, her gaze sweeping menacingly across the terror-stricken family. The threat was explicit, brutal, and final. "Throats will get slit." This was not a bluff, this was a guarantee delivered by the mistress of a modern slavery empire, an organization that treated human life as disposable inventory. Marlon dropped the phone. The line to safety was severed. Celia had arrived, and the siege had begun. Meanwhile, miles away on a desolate country road skirting the perimeter of Celia's desolate farm, the epicenter of her abhorrent empire, Ray, Celia's adopted son and chief operative, was locked in his own escalating confrontation. Ray had been sent to silence Dylan, who had earlier learned the devastating truth: Bear Wolf was working for them, or rather, enslaved by them. Ray's approach was aggressive, his internal control frayed. He was used to carrying out Celia's dirty work, grooming young people like Dylan and April for drug runs. But Dylan was no longer the compliant, scared teen Ray was accustomed to dominating. "You need to forget what you saw, Dylan," Ray snarled, the wind whipping his words away. "Your little friend Bear is taken care of. Safe." Dylan stood his ground, a fragile courage replacing his earlier fear. "Safe? Ray, I saw the farm. I saw the conditions. He's a slave. And you're her adopted son. Don't you see it?" Dylan's voice broke with realization. "You're being exploited by Celia too." This accusation, this unexpected recognition of his own chained existence, struck Ray harder than any physical blow. Ray, the efficient executor of Celia's will, had internalized the lie that he was essential, powerful. But Dylan's simple statement shattered the facade. Ray had been groomed, manipulated into thinking he was a boss when he was merely the highest-ranking victim. The sources indicate the emphasis placed on Ray being groomed was crucial. The sudden, horrific clarity that he, too, was a pawn in his adoptive mother's game caused something vital to snap inside him. Ray lost it. The descent into panic was swift and violent. Ray scrambled into his car, the engine roaring like a caged beast. He wasn't aiming to frighten Dylan, he was aiming to erase the inconvenient truth Dylan represented. Ray accelerated, the car lunging forward, headlights blinding. The impact was sickening, a crunch of metal against bone, a desperate, strangled cry lost to the night. Ray didn't stop. He dragged Dylan's unresponsive, mangled form into the passenger seat, his hands shaking, sweat stinging his eyes. This wasn't professional, it was psychotic self-preservation triggered by psychological collapse. At a secluded, dark turnoff, Ray performed the final, damning act. He pulled out a syringe too often reserved for the farm animals, now repurposed for human silence. The needle plunged deep, delivering a powerful drug, intended, as Celia hoped, to silence him forever. As the narcotic rushed through Dylan's veins, Washing away consciousness, Ray stared down at the boy he had destroyed. The vacant expression on Dylan's face was a mirror of Ray's own soul, empty, corrupted, and desperately lost. Back at the Dingle residence, the tension was unbearable. Celia, having established dominance through raw violence against Rona, moved to cement her control through psychological warfare. She sat regally, demanding silence, while Marlon nervously dabbed at the trickle of blood on Rona's face. "You think you hold the moral high ground, Marlon?" Celia asked, reaching into her pocket and pulling out a phone. "You think you can save everyone?" She activated a video call. The screen illuminated the face of Ray, distorted by panic and the low quality of the image. The video footage was not live, it was a recording, time-stamped minutes prior. It displayed the gruesome aftermath of the road confrontation. The camera shook violently, capturing Ray hitting Dylan with his car. The sound was muted, but the visual horror was loud enough. The next frame showed the precise moment Ray injected Dylan. The effect on April was devastating. She screamed, a primal, guttural noise that tore through the room. Marlon lunged forward, but Celia simply held the phone higher. "This is what happens when you interfere, Marlon," she said, her voice chillingly calm. "Your daughter, the victim, told you everything in a tearful confession. But what happens when the confession becomes the evidence of a crime you provoked?" This video proves that Dylan resisted arrest, an arrest conducted by a concerned citizen, Ray, and attacked him, forcing this tragic accident. Ray was merely administering emergency sedation. Celia's audacity was breathtaking. She was not just silencing them, she was weaving a counter-narrative of complete fabrication, turning Ray's murder attempt into a defensive maneuver. By showing them the immediate consequence of Dylan's intervention, she demonstrated the utter futility of resisting her. She then shifted tactics, playing the sympathetic mother, a role she performed with horrifying accuracy. "Ray is troubled, yes. I adopted him. He has weaknesses. But he is loyal. He has been forced to do this for his boss, that is me. We are a family unit, built on absolute obedience." She used the language of Ray's grooming to assert her control, simultaneously minimizing Ray's culpability while maximizing her own terrifying power. She needed them to believe that even her most dangerous operative was merely an extension of her will, a tethered attack dog. The camera pulls away from the claustrophobic terror of the Dingle cottage and transports us to the source of Celia's ill-gotten wealth, the farm. This place was not a quaint agricultural setting, it was a modern hellscape, a silent factory of broken backs and crushed spirits. We find Bear Wolf, the proud, strong man now reduced to a shell, standing beside a freshly dug pit. The air is foul, thick with the stench of sickness and damp earth. Bear is digging a grave. His fellow worker, Anya, had succumbed hours earlier. Anya was merely one of the victims, worked to the bone in unimaginable squalor. Her death was slow, agonizing, caused by an infection that, in any normal world, would have been easily treated. But in Celia's world, medical care was a luxury reserved for the profitable. Bear gently lowers Anya's slight, wrapped body into the cold, muddy pit. There are no prayers, no comforting words, just the profound silence of exhausted grief. Bear is not just mourning Anya, he is mourning hope itself. Ray had ensured their isolation was absolute, removing their phones and passports. Ray had delivered the final, cruel blow, whispering that none of Bear's family members were looking for him. This lie, more potent than any physical chain, cemented their confinement. Fictional embellishment: as Bear shovels the earth, a worn photograph falls from his pocket, a faded image of a woman and two laughing children. It is his family, the family Ray claimed had forgotten him. Bear's eyes, usually dull with fatigue, ignite with a spark of desperate defiance. He knows Ray lied. He saw the fleeting look in Ray's eyes when he delivered the message, a flicker of self-loathing that suggested complicity, yes, but also deep, personal pain. Bear realizes the man who took his life away is also a prisoner. The seeds of a brutal, shared uprising are sown in the muddy grave of Anya. The slaves live in constant dread, knowing that escape is impossible and death is the only release. Their existence is a relentless cycle of hard labor and starvation. Celia's farm operates under the chilling philosophy that the enslaved are more productive when constantly on the brink of despair. Ray, adrenaline giving way to profound, soul-crushing shame, drives aimlessly. He is haunted by the sight of Dylan's inert body. His internal monologue is a cacophony of Celia's manipulative lies and Dylan's simple, damning truth: "You're being exploited." The sources emphasize the crucial narrative function of Ray's grooming and the high likelihood of a redemption arc. He is alleged to have a longer contract, suggesting he is set to become a permanent fixture in the village, necessitating a moment of massive heroism. Ray parks his car in a dense copse of trees, far from Emmerdale, far from the farm. He stares at his hands, the hands that delivered the drugs, that carried out Celia's cruel mandates. The grooming runs deep, a decades-long psychological poison. But the sheer brutality of hitting Dylan was a line crossed, even for him. He remembers the initial flicker of light when he was first given ties to the village, a brief, heady feeling of belonging that Celia immediately crushed, twisting it into a new avenue for exploitation. Fictional embellishment. Ray flashes back to his childhood. Celia is praising him for turning in a runaway farmhand. Young Ray beams, proud of his loyalty. Celia leans down, kissing his forehead. "You're my weapon, Ray. My greatest achievement. Never forget that those who resist are weak. We are strong." This conditioning explains why he lost it when Dylan suggested weakness and exploitation. Now, the conditioning is breaking. He knows he needs to be punished for what he's done. But first, he needs to undo the immediate harm. He needs to locate Dylan before the injected drug wears off and Celia's cleanup crew finds him. He also realizes the one person who truly poses an existential threat to Celia is Bear, who knows the location of Anya's grave and the depth of the operation. Ray pulls out a burner phone, a device Celia insisted he use only for official business. He stares at the contact list: Celia, the anonymous buyer, and one unauthorized, coded number, a person from the village he briefly, foolishly trusted, perhaps Rona, before she snapped at Celia. He types a text message, his fingers clumsy with fear. It is cryptic, a lifeline thrown into the dark. "Farm, third barn." Bear knows. He sends it. He has just made the first move in his own devastating, self-destructive bid for freedom. He knows this act will precipitate the inevitable showdown between himself and his adopted mother. The choice is clear: he must save April, or Dylan, or Bear. The only way to redeem the monstrosity of his actions is through a massive heroic act, perhaps even sacrificing himself to protect the innocent lives he helped endanger. The narrative explodes into a thrilling prelude for the following episode, promising a horrific climax far exceeding the village's usual dramas. Celia, sensing Ray's wavering, prepares her final, brutal phase of elimination. At the Dingle cottage, she keeps Marlin and Rona imprisoned, using April as the collateral. She demands Marlin sign over his assets, fabricating a debt incurred during the drug runs Ray orchestrated. "If you cooperate, perhaps Dylan's accident will remain just that," Celia coos. "If you resist, well, the police will find a tragic murder-suicide scene here. And I will make sure the video of Ray hitting Dylan is played on every national news channel, implicating your family in the chaos." The hunt for Bear. Celia dispatches her heavy enforcers to the farm. She knows Bear Wolf is the most dangerous slave because he has witnessed death and knows the geography. Bear, emboldened by the memory of his family and Anya's grave, is formulating a desperate plan. He discovers a stash of tools, a pickaxe and a length of heavy chain hidden near the muddy grave. The race to save Dylan. Ray's cryptic message reaches Rona. Rona, her face still bleeding, sees the message and knows she must escape. She uses a kitchen knife, hidden under the pretense of preparing tea for Celia, to incapacitate one of Celia's less experienced guards, leaving a gruesome trail of blood that guarantees swift, violent retaliation from Celia. The showdown location. Ray, driven by a desperate need for atonement, knows the confrontation must happen on his turf, the farm. He is planning to turn Celia in, but he realizes that a confrontation in the open will lead to more deaths. He decides the only option is to lure Celia to the desolate third barn, where the slaves are housed, the location he messaged. He sets up a trap, relying on his intimate knowledge of the farm's hidden dangers and weaknesses. The ultimate sacrifice. Ray understands his life is forfeited the moment he betrays Celia. He knows he needs to take a bullet, perhaps literally, to secure the freedom of April or Bear. He prepares an explosive device improvised from farm supplies and fuel to use as a distraction, or perhaps, a final, lethal embrace for himself and his captor. The final moments of the preview episode are drenched in cinematic tension. Rona speeds towards the farm in a stolen vehicle, the engine screaming. Bear, wielding the pickaxe, silently stalks the perimeter of the third barn, prepared to defend his fellow slaves. Ray confronts Celia in a shadowy field. Celia, her voice dripping with ice, knows Ray has betrayed her. "You disappoint me, Ray. After all the years of grooming, of loyalty, you choose these insignificant villagers over your own flesh and blood?" Ray steps back, holding the detonation trigger. "You never saw me as your son, Celia. I was just your tool. But this tool. This tool is turning on you. The scene ends with a close-up on Celia's face, not of fear, but of incandescent rage. She reaches into her coat, pulling out a silenced pistol. A single, sharp crack rings out in the night. The camera pans slowly to show Rona's car skidding to a halt, the headlights illuminating the field. Is it Ray's blood staining the grass? Or has he succeeded in drawing first blood against the tyrant? The scene is saturated in fictional embellishment, leaving the audience shocked and desperate to know who survived the fatal opening volley of the war for Emmerdale. The redemption will come at a devastating cost, forcing Ray to sacrifice himself in a way that viewers will never forget. The single, sharp crack of the silenced pistol ripped through the cold night air, instantly overshadowing the roar of Rona's accelerating engine. Ray staggered back, a searing pain blossoming across his left shoulder. He had not been quick enough. The bullet, fired with casual, practiced ease by Celia, had found its mark, tearing through flesh but miraculously missing bone and vital organs. Celia Daniels did not flinch, she simply adjusted her aim, her face a mask of disappointment rather than rage. She had hoped for a clean kill, an efficient severance of the weakest link in her chain. Foolish, Ray, Celia hissed, stepping over the furrowed earth. After all the efforts, the years of grooming, you still believe in fairy tales like redemption? She spat the word out like poison. You were mine. Ray dropped the detonation trigger, his hand clutching the wound. The sudden pain was a stark clarity, washing away the last vestiges of the manipulative psychological fog she had shrouded him in since he was a child. He looked at the gun, then at his adoptive mother, and saw not a parent, but a monster. He knew now what he had to do. He had to be punished for what he had done to Dylan and April. Just as Celia raised the pistol again for a finishing shot, a blinding flash of light swept across the field. Rona's stolen car skidded violently onto the verge, kicking up dust and gravel. Rona, her face pale, the blood stain from Celia's earlier assault stark against her cheek, threw the door open and screamed. "Get away from him, you sociopath!" Celia turned, annoyed by the interruption. This momentary distraction was all Ray needed. Ignoring the agony in his shoulder, he lunged not for the weapon, but for the burner phone he had used to send the cryptic warning. He hurled it into the dense, dark undergrowth where Celia would never find it, the final proof of her farm's location and operation now lost to the darkness, perhaps forever.